Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Banking and Credit presentation for international students here in Canada. We're going to take a look at the banking system in Canada, the Canadian banking system, the alternative banking sector, establishing credit, and then we'll show you a few of the ISC and the International Student Connect resources that we do have available for you. We'll just jump right into it. The Canadian banking system as we know it, we've got five major banks in Canada, and they're called the Big Five banks. There's Bank of Nova Scotia, Bank of Montreal, CIBC, which is the Canadian Imperial Bank, TD, Toronto Dominion or TD Canada Trust, and RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada. These are the big five banks, and that is not to say that there are not other banks in Canada. We have several other banks. However, these are the ones that are the major financial institutions and that you perhaps will come across more frequently than others. As an international student, you're probably wondering, what are the benefits to having a bank account? I mean, you're only here for, it's quite temporary. You're not going to be living in Canada, some of you, so you're probably wondering why. Well, some of the reasons that you should have a bank account is the fact that you can access direct deposits, and this means that you give permission for a person or a company to directly deposit money into your bank account. You'll have access to checks, so your own personal checks. You're able to write your own personal checks. The ability to budget effectively, that is one of the major things, because there are a few budgeting apps that you can download or use based on the fact that you do have a bank account. Creating credit history is quite important, especially if you are planning on remaining here. Whether you're planning to remain in Canada or outside of Canada doesn't really matter, but creating Canadian credit history will actually help you in the future in terms of if you're planning to get a credit card, or if you'd like to purchase a home or a car in the future. That is something that having an account will do for you, and it's actually very easy access to your money. It is safe. No one is going to take it, and you don't have to worry about carrying around large volumes of cash on you. What do you want to do when you choose your bank account? Well, choose your bank. There are a few questions that you'd like to ask yourself. First of all, you want to know, what documents are you going to take with you when you go to the bank? What do you need? What are they looking for? And how long is it going to take to clear a check once a check has been deposited into your account? Clearly, you don't want to put money in your account and you can't access it for a whole month. So you do want to ask that question. You want to find out about interest, so the interest that is going to be paid on the money that you're placing in your account. And last but not least, you want to find out how hard or how easy will it be for you to access the money that you have placed in the account. You will need, I'll tell you, two pieces of identification for international students. You'll need your study permit, or it's called an IMM 1442 form, a temporary resident visa, you can use as well, and proof of enrollment in a Canadian educational institution. When you go to the bank, that's what you need to take with you in order for them to actually open an account for you. If you don't have any of these pieces of identification, they're probably going to turn you back. So please do not forget 2 pieces of identification. What is the difference between a checking account versus a savings account? Well, most of you would have already known, if you've had an account back home, if you've got banking services in your country, like, perhaps your parents didn't have those accounts, you had them, then you would know that there is a difference between a checking account and a savings account. Your savings account basically is there for you to save. It's not intended for you to use that money. So if you put, let's say, $10 every week in that savings account, the goal is for you to keep it there for perhaps a year or so without touching it. Your checking account, however, that's the one that you use for your groceries, to pay your bills, to go out shopping, eating out, and all of that fun stuff. That is money that is accessible consistently, almost like cash. That's what your checking account is for. There are several ways to access the money that you've deposited into your bank account. You do not necessarily need to go into the branch, but you can. So you can access it through your debit cards, your credit cards. You can go to the ATM, the automated teller machines, or you can go directly inside the bank and speak to a teller and get the money that you have deposited into your account. There are some banking terminologies that if you are not familiar with the banking system, you may not be familiar with these terminologies. So not sufficient funds, you would hear someone say NSF. So you may have a check that went NSF. Or overdraft protection. Overdraft protection is protection that you get. Let me just give you a very brief example of overdraft protection. So the funds that you have in the bank, let's say you have $500. That is your money that you have deposited into your account. That money belongs to you. The overdraft protection that the bank can give you, and oftentimes when you open a bank account, they will offer you a small overdraft protection. So let's say perhaps they gave you $100. Now that means the $500 that you have in the bank, when you go to check the amount of money that you have available to you, it'll say $600. So the bank would have loaned you an extra $100. So now, instead of you only having access to $500, you have access to $600. The reason for that is to give you a buffer so that if you have bills that needs to be paid, let's say, for example, you've scheduled some prepaid bills, your cell phone bill, your rent, and perhaps a debt, a student debt or something that you're servicing. What will happen is that extra $100, just in case you went over the $500 that you have in your account, that extra $100 would be a buffer. So if your amount, let's say, came up to $550, even though you don't technically have $550 in the bank would have loaned you the extra $100. So that's what overdraft protection is all about. And you can get further information on that by speaking to someone in the bank when you go to open your account. There is the PIN number, your personal identification number. That number is very unique, and you shouldn't give that number out to anyone, not even family members. They could start anywhere from 4 to, I believe, about 8 numbers. Most people have 4. E-transfers. E-transfers is a very fast and effective way for you to transfer money back and forth. So you can transfer money from one account. You can transfer funds from one account to the next. So if you've got a checking account and a savings account, you're able to transfer money between those accounts. And you can also transfer funds to your friends using your email as well. As long as they have a bank account, you can transfer funds to them as well. Online banking, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. You're students, so clearly everybody's got a device, so I'm sure you understand online banking. It's literally where you are able to go online and check your account balance and the transactions that you have done in your bank account. And then there is direct deposit. We touched on it a little bit earlier, and it's just a very simple process. If you receive money on a regular basis, say for example from your job, you're getting paid, 9 times out of 10, your employer will directly deposit the money into your account. So they won't write you a check. As opposed to writing you a check, they will provide you with the payment directly. So when the end of the week comes, or the 2 weeks that you're supposed to get paid, they will send the money directly to your account, and you'll get a statement for the money that you have earned. So I think that is actually a very good reason to have a bank account, don't you? Okay, let's take a look at some banking tips. Here are a few things that you should actually find out. Find out from the bank what are the fees? There are some accounts, most new accounts, they'll give you some perks in the beginning, so there are no fees, and especially for students, you actually have the opportunity to get no fee accounts because you're students. That is a bonus, believe me. And the reason I say that that is a bonus is because you could pay anywhere between $11 to $20 a month in accounting, in banking fees. So definitely capitalize on that one. Fees of up to about $3 if you use another automated teller machine, so the ATM. Think about it. If you are banking with, let's say, the Bank of Nova Scotia, and you decided to withdraw money, I mean, you can take money from any automated teller machine, from any other bank. So let's say you're a Scotiabank customer, but you've ran out of cash, you need some money very urgently, and there's only a TD bank machine, an ATM there, and you withdraw that money, you may be charged $3 by Scotia and also $3 by TD for their service. So definitely find that out, because you will realize, as a student, even a penny counts. I know, I was a student myself. Now, for your PIN number, you should choose a very difficult number. Do not choose the birthday of your boyfriend or the year you were born. No, that is too easy for someone to find your card and actually hack into your account. So try to make it a little bit more difficult. Do not give it out to anyone, and regularly check your bank statements. That is, go online, look at, how much you've spent. Did you spend this money? Or, what is coming out of your account on a monthly basis? Try to be on top of that, because that is how fraud happens, and people don't generally recognize it until they're out of a lot of cash. Enroll for online banking for convenience. That is a really, really good thing to do. I mean, I don't do any banking with my computer. I do everything with my mobile device. So absolutely, enroll for online banking. You'll thank me for this later. Okay? Now, we're going to take a look at the alternative banking sector. And that's probably strange. If you're not Canadian, you're probably wondering, what are they talking about? What is this thing? Okay, so the alternative banking sector looks at things like check cashing outlets, for example. You may see around, if you are already here in the country, you'll see things like, a Money Mart, Cash Money, things like that. These are what we're referring to as the alternative banking sector. Most of the people who use these different outlets are people who generally do not have a bank account. There are some pros and some cons to this. So if you do not have a bank account, you may use these places. That's a pro, and you can get quick cash. The con is that you will pay an extremely high rate of interest, and eventually you lose a lot of money using these services. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't go for it, but think about the cost that you will incur. And why do it when you can simply walk into a bank and open an account with a traditional bank? You'll have some of them that you'll find is payday loan. Payday loan, we're going to tell you about this because we know that many newcomers have actually used the service, and then later they realize that this was not necessarily a good idea. So many of them will lend you money, usually about $500 or less, and the loans are typically due on the next pay day. So most often they will lend you the money if in fact you are working, because they'll ask for your proof of employment, your pay stubs. You must give the lenders access to your checking account, or you have to write them a post-dated check for the amount that you're owing later. Now, there's some pros and cons to this as well. If you do not have a bank account, you may go to this place and you can get quick cash, again, like I had said earlier, and usually the interest rate is quite high for these services. There's also the pawn shops. Pawn shops generally are these places that you can go and sell anything. Most people think that pawn shops, they'll only buy jewelry. No, they buy almost anything. So they'll take your cell phone, they'll take your iPod, they'll take your coat if you've got a really expensive coat. So they'll take a number of different things. What will happen is that they will take the item from you, and then based on the value of the item, they will decide how much money they loan you for this particular transaction. If the loan cannot be repaid on time, the owner of the shop may decide to sell your property, and oftentimes they sell it for a lot more than what they loaned you. So be very wary of these kinds of places. If you can do better, do not go to these places, especially as a student. Some of the banking resources that we have available, we've tried these bank account selection tool. It's from the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, FCAC. You may find them at www.fcac-acfc.gc.ca, and then you can also practice to use an ATM. It comes from one of the government websites in Ottawa. Just go to the Ottawa Community Loan Fund and you'll find this resource there for you. Now, we'll talk to you a little bit about establishing credit because it is important especially if you're planning on remaining in Canada after you have completed your studies. Establishing your credit is actually something that is quite important. And if you come from a country like mine, where we didn't do credit, my parents actually raised us as, if you don't have the money, you don't do it. You've got the money, go ahead. Now, let's look at the different types of credit. There is what is known as revolving credit. Revolving credit involves your credit card. Generally, the lender is the financial institution, and you can make purchases or pay your bills or and also make online purchases. One of the conditions for this is that the credit limit, there's a credit limit amount, there's a minimum payment that must be made every month, and there's also interest rates that you will incur on top of this. Generally, the interest rate is about 19% on any unpaid balance in the beginning. However, if you've got really good credit score, you may in fact be able to get interest rate that is kind of between 6 to 10% on your outstanding balance. But that's if you've got a really good credit score. And then we look at the retail store cards. These retail store cards you can access from different stores. So many large stores will offer these credit cards. For example, you can get a Walmart credit card. You can get a, let's see, Loblaws credit card. So they're in-store credit cards. Some of them allow you to make purchases outside, while others, for example, the Bay, which is the Hudson's Bay, it's a very large merchandise store, you can only make purchases at the Bay. The credit limit is usually, depending on your credit, between $500 to about $2,000, and the interest rate is usually high. It's about 28%. And then there's the overdraft protection that we talked about. This is also another form of revolving credit. It's connected to your bank account, and there's a small fee to use it. In fact, there is a fee, but the fee is actually less than the other interest rates. And the cost, there's the interest cost. Then you've got installment credits where you buy now, you pay later. These are generally offered at retail stores, generally the high-end furniture stores, and you pay in installments. So for example, you could purchase some furniture. Let's say you wanted to buy a bedroom set, and the bedroom set is $1,000. You could go in. If your credit is great, they'll allow you to take it out, so you can say, okay, you sign an agreement, you get the furniture, but you pay for it over the course of 12 months in perhaps $100 installments, or depending on what your interest rate is. We have things like rent to own, where you can actually rent the furniture and then you own it later. So, and they've got various different terms. For more information, you'd have to go and speak with the people who run these operations. And then there's the consumer loan that you get from a financial institution that you actually use for cars or home renovations, big things. And there is a repayment schedule for that. Now, there are some features with credit cards. So let's look at, because we talked about the revolving credit, and the revolving credit entails credit cards. Let's look at the features of some of these credit cards. A credit card is not a bad thing to have. It's how you manage it, okay? This is helping you to build credit. Okay, there are some annual fees, and the annual fee could be a yearly fee that you pay depending on the type of credit card that you have. Not all credit cards have annual fees. There is an annual percentage rate called the APR. There's also a credit limit. Let me talk a little bit about the APR. The APR describes the interest for a whole year, not just the monthly interest. And different credit cards have different annual percentage rates. Okay, so when you decide to get your credit card, absolutely go over that fine print. Do not just put it away. There's a credit limit, which is the maximum amount that you can spend. You could get credit cards that are anywhere from $300 to $20,000, $30,000, depending on your credit score and how much cash you've got or how much assets you have. There's a grace period, and the grace period is generally 21 days from the date that you spent the money. If you pay your loan back within that 21-day period, then you've spent that money interest-free. So the 19% or the 20% interest rate that they've charged you, you would be able to pay your bill and not pay that interest. And then there's a minimum payment. So what is a minimum payment? Your minimum payment is the smallest amount that you can repay on your credit card, usually anywhere between 2 to 10%. You want to absolutely always make your minimum payment if you can't make the payment in full. And the reason for that is because if you are able to make your minimum payment, then even though you haven't made the full payment, but your bill, your credit score, is not affected in a negative way. It's actually impacted in a positive way. Some credit card companies have reward programs, so depending on, if you spend $1, you may get points, you may get a point per dollar, things like that. There are some insurance benefits as well, and they also have cash advance, so you can go to the bank and withdraw money from your credit card if you don't have enough money to spend. However, that cash advance generally comes with a hefty price, so that's another thing that you need to make sure that you check your fine print for. When you choose a credit card, think about, what is it that you need this credit card for? What will you be using it for? Will you be mostly using it for large purchases, or are you going to be shopping with it? Take some time to do the research, figure out the different features on the card. So does the card have an annual percentage, does the card have an annual fee? If the card has an annual fee, negotiate and figure out, can I get a card with no annual fee? Or if the annual fee is, let's say, $50, can they minimize that to $25 or something? Try to do some negotiations. You actually can. Most people don't know that they can, but you can. The bank wants your business. Remember that. And shop around and make sure that you get the best deal possible. Several different institutions will offer credit cards. Don't just stick to, okay, so I bank with TD and TD is the only bank that's offering me a credit card. No, shop around and find the best deal possible for you. And last but not least, remember what I said, read the fine print. Don't forget, there's always something in there that you may want to either dispute or clarify. There are those prepaid credit cards that you can actually purchase and reload. It's not a bad idea to get one if you don't have any credit yet, but it's not a form of credit. Some of them are single use only, And they actually have some hidden fees. So you could spend, let's say, $500 on this card to purchase the card, but when you spend it, you'll realize that you've only been able to spend $450. So your $50 is then just wasted in different fees and all sorts of different things. So again, try to do the research before you decide on getting a prepaid credit card. It is actually good because you can shop online with it, but if you've got a bank account and you have your debit card is usually a Visa debit, so you're able to shop online with a Visa debit as well. Please note that these prepaid credit cards do not create credit history. They don't do anything for your credit. So unless you're just using it as a gift card or something, I would suggest do a lot of research before getting it. Now, we talked a little bit about the things that will affect your credit scores and the things that won't affect your credit score. Well, you may be wondering, what is this credit business that she's talking about? Let me give you a little bit about the structure of how credit works here in Canada. So we've got credit bureaus. TransUnion Canada is one of the credit bureaus, and there is Equifax Canada. We have the telephone numbers and the websites listed here for you. They actually do the reporting and they rate your credits, so whatever it is that you do. So the order would be the credit bureau. When you approach a lender, the credit bureau will complete your credit report. So they will, when you purchase, for example, if you make the purchase with your credit card or a line of credit or whatever it is that you've made your purchase with, it is reported to the credit bureau, and they compile a report for you, about your credit history. Then there is the credit score, the credit rating. They rate your credit, whether it's good, average, excellent, or not. And they then provide a report to the lender. So if you are going to purchase a car, for example, and you went to, let's say, Honda Canada. When you go to Honda Canada, if you don't have all the money to buy the car outright and you're trying to get a loan, what Honda Canada will do is they will submit a credit application for you to various lenders. Those lenders will then contact one of the credit bureaus or both credit bureaus, and the credit bureau will pull your credit report, provide them with a credit rating, and if your credit score is great, then you'll end up with A+. If it's not, hey, I don't know, you're probably not going to get that car. So again, credit bureau is where it all happens. Now, the credit report is a summary of your credit history. It is not, like they don't have stories about you. It's just a summary of your credit history. The report is created whenever you borrow money, like I expressed earlier. And it's actually a factual statement. So factual information on your credit cards, they could add your mobile phone or, a telephone, a home telephone bill or internet bill to that. Let's take a look at the credit scores and how they work, okay? Now, if your credit score, the credit score is a 3-digit number, okay? So what the credit bureau does is they rate you and they give you a score. The credit score is a 3-digit number that is calculated using a mathematical formula. Now, if your score is between 900 to 750, then you are in excellent position to get absolutely anything that you want on credit. In fact, you would be a god in terms of, credit scores, right? When your score gets to 700 to 750, then your score is still very good. You can get a lot of things at that level. 699 to 660, still have great credit score. You can still get stuff, okay?
Now, 659 to 620, not so good. They begin to question you. They begin to ask you for a cosigner and all of that good stuff. And then once you're 579 to 500, your credit score is absolutely quite poor, and yeah, you need some major help in that direction when that happens. So do try to do all the good things that we've mentioned earlier so that you maintain a score anywhere from 700 to 900, okay? And then you'll be in good standing. A few tips on using your credit wisely. Always pay your bills on time. Pay your bills in full by the due date. If you can't, make sure that you pay the minimum payment. Now, do not go over your credit limit. Try your hardest to not go over your credit limit. Keep your credit card balance well below the limit, and do not apply for too many credit cards. It will actually impact your score very negatively. They look at it as, you know, you're credit hunting. So don't apply for too many credit cards. People have asked me in the past, does it really matter if I've got 10 credit cards or if I only have 2? Well, 2 is pretty good. Just maintain them. Don't go to 5 and 10. You don't need that amount. Now, here are some of the resources that we do have available for you. We have the handbook, the Ontario International Student Connect website. You can visit the website, and here you'll find a lot of information. We have what is known as the transition plan, and this plan is on our website. You use this plan in order to help you plan effectively, especially if you're planning to transition from student to permanent resident. About the International Student Connect project, now it was created to provide settlement support to international students and their families, and the project is actually funded by the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration Canada. Costi Immigrant Services is the agency that is coordinating this project, and we serve about 38,000 people annually. If you'd like to contact us, please do so at 1-844-871-4567, or you can email us at ic@costi.org. Thank you so much for joining us.